Hi, I'm Rishabh Modi and I'll be introducing the concept of requirement elicitation as a formal method. Before we talk about it, we need to understand what requirements are and why we need to have formal process to elicit them. Requirements convey the expectations of users from the software product. The requirements can be obvious or hidden, known or unknown, expected or unexpected from a client's point of view. When the requirements to a system are not clear, the error during this phase of the development process will reflect later on the next phases, which definitely will cause the stakeholders high cost of management. Without a formal requirement gathering process, the project may be left with gaps in requirement analysis, which causes a lot of maintenance issues and in extreme cases may lead to project failure. Thus, a software project requires a proper method for requirement elicitation to get a good understanding of the initial system in development. Let's talk about requirement elicitation. It is a formal method for the system stakeholders for finding requirements. The aim here is to gather knowledge about different aspects of the system such as application domain, system services, performance requirements, and hardware constraints. The requirement elicitation process reduces the chances of missing out crucial requirements for the system which may have a bigger impact if found later. Requirement elicitation process is not just meant to be carried out by the engineers working over the project, but instead require the combined efforts of all people interacting with the system or are going to interact with the system. Some of the stakeholders involved in this process are end users, business managers, development engineers, domain experts, and the users within the organization. As useful as requirement elicitation can be, it is also difficult to carry out this process due to some limitations holding the requirement engineers back. Sometimes stakeholders may not know precisely what they want from their system and may make unrealistic demands. Stakeholders may think that they have expressed their domain requirements effectively, however, requirement engineers may not have understood their system domain completely. Requirements emerge from various sources. This makes the job of requirement engineer difficult to distinguish commonalities and conflicts between them. Importance of requirements may change with the progression of the system and thus new requirements originally not consulted may emerge.
Hi, I am Ayan Shah. Okay, so as we learned, requirement elicitation is a process which helps the system developers to get access to a more formal and documented requirements document for the system. Then what is the difference between requirement gathering and requirement elicitation? So requirement gathering is in a way an informal method of collecting requirements for the system, defines the requirements which are apparent in the project, and it helps to gather requirements in a reactive manner rather than a proactive manner. On the other hand, requirement elicitation is a formal method which needs resources, planning, and involvement by the stakeholders to document all the requirements possible during the initial phase of development, and it proactively seeks for connections between already present requirements and to enlist new requirements. So now we will talk about the process of elicitation and analysis. So the main major four activities are requirement discovery, classification and organization, prioritization and negotiation, and finally specification. The process cycle starts with requirements discovery and ends with requirements documentation. The analyst's understanding of the requirements improves with each round of the cycle. The cycle ends when the requirements document is complete. So let's see the phases of elicitation in bit more detail. So firstly, we have requirements discovery. It is the process of interacting with stakeholders of the system to discover the requirements. Domain requirements from stakeholders and documentation are also discovered during this activity. Next, we have requirements classification and organization. This activity takes the unstructured collection of requirements, groups related requirements, and organizes them into coherent clusters. A common way is to associate them to subsystems. The next stage is requirements prioritization and negotiation. The requirements come from various stakeholders. To remove the ambiguity and conflicts between them, they are discussed for clarity and correctness, and any unrealistic requirements are compromised between them. And finally, the requirement specification phase. All formal and informal, functional and non-functional requirements are documented and input into the next round of the spiral. The requirement elicitation process is a difficult task to achieve without any solid methods for the same. Over time, a lot of requirement elicitation techniques have been devised. However, an organizer may choose to use select techniques for the purpose. Some of the techniques we illustrate further in detail are brainstorming, interviewing, ethnography, and requirements workshop.
My name is Maitri Thakkar and I am going to talk about brainstorming. Brainstorming is a technique that includes forming a team of 7 to 8 people who are given a topic and asked to pitch their ideas for the topic. It is usually used in business analysis. There are two activities included in brainstorming. First is the storm, which is collecting ideas from team members. Second is the calm, which is filtering ideas and finding a solution. The first method is the storm. This process includes team members pitching their ideas. So, the main points that should be taken care of while forming a team is to include active participants, which are literally jumping out of their seats to participate. And when this type of group is not possible, index cards or sticky notes must be used where participant can write his or her ideas. During this process, the scribe must write down all the ideas. Also, the leader or moderator always encourage positive and out of the box ideas. The leader must make sure that the team members have all of their doubts resolved and are thinking in the right direction. The time limit of this process must be between 5 minutes to 2 hours depending on the objective given to the team members. The second method is the calm. This process involves filtering out ideas collected in the storm process. Sometimes voting is also considered to select the best ideas. Voting is between team members. The moderator must now evaluate all the ideas and eliminate some to reach to the solution. To make this process simple, all similar ideas must be condensed and ideas must be rated and a criteria is set so that the ideas that does not match the criteria is eliminated. Now the result is decided by the leader and distributed among all the participants. Pros of brainstorming. It helps to come with great ideas. Every team member thinks differently and thinking of standing out from others helps them to think creatively. It encourages companionship. It helps create stronger working relationship among team members. It creates environment which stimulates people and motivates them to do well. Cons of brainstorming. It promotes fights and arguments. Sometimes members judge other participants' ideas and statements which can lead to fight and argument. It is not always effective. There can be members who have poor communication skills and that can make it difficult for them to understand others' ideas and pitch their own in front of others.
Hi guys, myself Vihar Bhatt and I will be giving a brief overview of interviews as an elicitation technique. Interviews are one of the most widely used requirements elicitation technique. In interviews, the requirements engineering team asks the questions to stakeholders regarding existing systems and the system expected to be developed. Communication with domain experts and end users helps to clear any ambiguity, obtain opinions, and as a result develop a clear set of requirements. The system stakeholders may be interviewed in three ways. First, the structured interviews. In structured interviews, the requirements engineering team asks pre-planned set of questions to the system stakeholders. Usually, the goal of this kind of interview is to obtain quantitative data from the stakeholders. Second, the unstructured interviews. In unstructured interviews, there is no pre-planned set of questions. The interview is aimed at gathering as much information as possible about a particular topic. Focus is on obtaining qualitative data from few people who possess good knowledge about the domain. Semi-structured interviews. This kind of interview are used to get the advantage of both structured as well as unstructured interviews. These interviews are a mixture of the above mentioned two kinds. When discussing a planned set of questions, new questions are sure to arise from the answer to these questions. Also, open interviews alone can prove ineffective. Semi-structured interviews helps in obtaining both qualitative as well as quantitative data. Some benefits of interviews. Interviews facilitate direct interaction with the system stakeholders. This helps to get understanding of what the stakeholders do, how they use the system, and what problems they face with the existing systems. Through interviews, interviewer can establish a connection with the interviewees. Interviews are made to feel that they are a crucial part of the project. Disadvantages of the interviews. Interviews can be time consuming. The interviewer needs to prepare in advance what question need to be asked and in what manner. If the interviewer is inexperienced or lacks good communication skills, the interview may turn out to be less effective. Many times the stakeholders themselves don't know what they want or don't know how to express their requirements. Rules of the interviews. The interview should not have any preconceived ideas about the system requirements. The interviewer should be prepared in advance of what topics are to be discussed and what questions are to be asked so that the focus from the goal of interview is not lost. The interviewer should be open-minded and should be willing to understand the opinions and ideas of the interviewees even though it may sound strange. However, requirement elicitation using interviewing alone can miss out a lot of essential information. So it is necessary that it be used in addition to other techniques such as prototyping, user observation, etc.
Hi, my name is Meet Patel and I am going to discuss ethnography. The origins of ethnography lies in the sociology and anthropology. It can be said that ethnography is an observational method which tries to present a portrait of life as seen and understood by those who live and work within the domain concerned. In requirements, elicitation is important for a system to take proper account of the effects of social and organizational context to the practical operation of the system. How does it work? Ethnography requires field work. An analyst immerses herself or himself in the working environment. The analyst observes the actual work practices and takes note of the actual tasks and participants involved. Ethnography helps in discovering implicit system requirements that reflect actual ways that people work rather than the assumed or formal processes defined by organization. Suckman found that the actual work practices were far richer, more complex, and more dynamic than the simple models assumed by the office systems. Integrating ethnography into requirements using zooming method. This process kickstarts with a very short ethnographic study to uncover the basic structure of a certain work area. Extended ethnographic studies combined with detailed interviews is used to investigate results from previous studies. With prototyping, ethnography reports the development of the prototype so that very few prototype refinement cycles are required. Types of ethnography. Concurrent ethnography. In this approach, ethnographic study takes place at the same time as the system is developed. The study is followed by a debriefing session involving both the requirements engineer and the designers. A prototype is constructed, then in the meantime, a further ethnographic study is conducted by the engineers. This study results in decreasing rate of utility of fieldwork for the design of a system. Quick and dirty ethnography. A brief and focused ethnographic studies are undertaken to inform developers about environment of the system to be developed. Although brief study do not result in a complete and detailed study of a workplace, but this approach provides much valuable knowledge of social organization in a relatively short space of time. Evaluative ethnography. This case is used to validate an already existing requirement specification. This shows that ethnography is not only applicable in requirement elicitation but also in other areas of requirement and software engineering processes. Pros and cons of ethnography. Pros. Helps to discover certain features of a workplace in a shorter time period, helps understand how people work in an organization and how they interact with each other, doesn't need much resources to be effective, helps reveal critical events not observed by any other technique. Cons. There is no detailed guide on how to perform ethnographic technique effectively and therefore it requires engineers to have a lot of experience to perform it, fails to produce desirable results due to diverse population, focuses mainly on end users. Sometimes it can be time consuming.
Hello guys, myself Jay Patel and I will be explaining requirement workshop. So what is requirement workshop? Requirement workshop can be identified as a structured and facilitated event where previously identified stakeholders get together to elicit, refine, prioritize, validate and discuss requirement. To be successful, requirement workshop must include a recorder to record participants' input and a facilitator to direct the discussion. Workshops are useful where the business analyst wants to gain stakeholder consensus, tap into the collective wisdom of stakeholders, elicit requirements within a short period. According to EBG Consulting, workshops have potential to reduce product defects by 20 to 50%, reduce scope creep by 70 to 80%, and save time and efforts by 5 to 15% throughout the project life cycles. Workshop can be combined with supporting materials like problem statements, scenarios written on paper, flip chart, markers, and a projector. Moscow technique for prioritizing requirements, brainstorming for discovering requirements, mockups prototyping for refining and validating requirements, structure walkthrough for reviewing requirements. Ground rules for setup at the beginning of the workshop, such as participants may be split into the multiple teams to get the discussion going with each team representing a mix of different interests. Also, participants may be given a problem statement to discuss objectives to achieve. They may also be asked to identify requirements, review the existing ones, or assign a priority to each requirement. The business analyst should listen, observe the group dynamics, and decipher the body language. These are useful insights which may guide the business analyst in asking relevant question or drawing conclusion. Also, business analysts should keep track of time so that the objectives of the workshops are achieved within an allotted time.